I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to properly wick, juice, and put your top cap on the Deathwish Modz Isolation Tank. Last night I had this thing going, so I left one side wicked already, just to save time. I purposely leave this bottom airflow cover off while I'm in the middle of doing this. I'll show you why. And just if you guys are perfectionists, this is the wick that I took out last night. And it is, you know, about 1.25 inches. That's all you need. You don't need a lot of cotton in this. This is not a big juice well. Let's see how small the wicking and juice channels are compared to something bigger. Like this is the 30 by hive, and they're huge. You do need a lot of cotton in there. Another thing that I think guys might be doing wrong is using coils that are too big. It's hard for tanks to keep up with that much power and to be able to juice really big coils. These are 3.5s by Coil Gods that I have in here. So I'll just show you what I do with the cotton. This is just simple cotton bacon. And I just try to bend this in half. These aren't big, thick pieces of cotton. And the way I get these to look right and lay down flat is just by like quick little lick on the inside of my palm. Then I rub my hands together and they come out shaped nicely. I wet my fingers a little bit, make a nice point so it'll go through. Okay, so that's started. It's enough for me to grab the cotton. I give it a little bit of a twist so it all stays together through the build. And there is not much resistance there, guys. Gets a tiny bit bunched up, no problem. Then I pull it back out a little so everything's even. So where do I cut this at to make it right? I like to bring this down to where the deck begins. Actually, where the deck ends. Right on like this lip here. Let's see if that'll focus. Yeah. I bring it down here to this lip. Same thing on the other side. Right where that final bend happens, right here, is where I'm going to want to cut that. You can kind of push it in and get an indentation from it, and that tells you where to cut it. So that is my current move. Bunch of this cotton. I'm seeing my dent, and that's where I'm going to cut. Bang. Not a lot of cotton. Same story on the other side. I'm just turning it so I can see it better. But I'm gonna bring that down, look for where it dents, and that's where I want to cut. And you know, pull it a tiny bit so it looks even. This is about what we're working with. Now the next thing I do is I have this kit This was like $5 at Home Depot. I got it so many years ago. Different sets of screwdrivers, I mean. I grabbed the smallest one in there. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to hold this cotton in place, and then I just open it up a little bit. I don't do a straight comb like some guys do, because we need most of this cotton to fill that well here. Pull off any excess. This is just making the cotton more porous and more thirsty. Same story other side. Folding it down on this side so it doesn't move terribly on me. Just moving it. Just a little bit. Okay. And then this is when things start to get important as to where you're not going to get any leaks, things like that. I wrap this up. I hold my cotton up. I never like bending cotton, so I try to like almost do more of an arch than a bend. And I start to lay that on where I want to go with it, which is right above the those wells, those cotton channels. Same story on the other side. I will get the proper arch and bend to it like this. And begin to lay that over and use this to put it in its proper place. So currently, this is just sitting on top of the channels. It's not in where I need it to be. And that's why this thing comes in handy. If you don't have a super small screwdriver, I have this like jeweler's tool that I wrapped coils on for a long time. That'll work. I mean, even a bobby pin, safety pin, anything little and pointy will work. So this is where I start bringing the cotton down into those cotton channels. And I'm not stuffing anything in there. I'm just like pouncing it in there. If you make a mistake and push it down too hard, you can always pull it up a tiny bit and then restuff. Okay, so this side, and I always push mine toward the front. Like I want to see cotton in this window. Okay, here we go. Same story, different side. It's already laying there nicely right where I want it to go. Now I just need to push it into the cotton channel. And you see me pushing it forward. Same story over here. And that looks good. That's a decent amount of cotton in there. It doesn't need a lot. Again, this is a smaller channel than these monsters. If you don't feel like you properly have enough in there, the biggest thing I can tell you is to not jam it in there ever. That's what's going to mess you up, and that's where your dry hits are going to come from. So you can always get a little spare piece of cotton. The spare piece that you cut off, and like just a little piece like that. If you can put that in the back of your build and like real gently push that into the channels, but that's not necessary for how I just did that. Another thing with this, sometimes you'll put this in and get a little bit of a leak. You don't want to fill this tank all the way right away. You want to give it a minute to see how the juice is settling. You can always get something flat if you feel like that you're not pounced down here enough and this is filled. I would get something flat and push that build down a tiny bit. Like I would bring that whole coil build down just a little bit. So if you feel like you cut your cotton a little bit shy, a little bit short, that's fine. Push that build down into there a tiny bit more. But this is, none of this is bent hard, and none of this has been stuffed in there. It's just laying in there nicely because it was cut properly. It was cut properly to the end of this deck, up to this lip. That's where I did my measuring. Okay, and then the proper way, I'm using Eye of Horus Talamasca, incredible juice. That's another thing too. This is a 70-30 VG to PG blend. I think sometimes guys get in trouble when they have like too much PG in their juice. So I just lay juice on the top of mine, and I also like to prime my cotton by hitting the windows. Just paint those windows with your juice in the front, and that starts opening up the cotton fibers more. More up top. I mean, everybody's got their different ways of doing it. I like my cotton, I like my build, everything basically saturated. So I'll paint those windows another time. And as I look, there's always like a little bit of dry cotton in the back here. A couple drops for that. A couple drops for this. Third time on painting this window, because that's where it's really going to happen. That's what's going to drink up your juice. Okay, this is from last night, this side, but I'll give it a little bit of love. Okay. So I left the airflow off of this on purpose so I can show you that I'm not getting any type of juice coming out, and there's also a little trick to that. So I'm using, these are brand new, I just pulled these out, the LG 2650s. These things hit hard. Going with the twin. And I'm just getting this started. Okay, that's not fully in on purpose. So here is your airflow. What's important to me is to juice this up. Guys are always saying this is getting seized up. I understand that. It'll get seized up if you don't lubricate it. So I just ran a little bit of juice in there, and now I'm using my finger to guide it. So it's time for this to go back. And let's see, I'm looking for that little engraving. There's a little space there, and I like to line it up. I like mine wide open because this is a pretty tight tank to begin with. So I like mine wide open so I can get some cloud with the flavor that it gives. And now I'm nice and tight all around. Okay. Oh, and that was another thing. I purposely try to keep this cotton within this barrier here because I want this to go on nicely. Get it lined up. I actually screw the top backward for a second so it finds the right grooves. I'm on it. Put that on, snug, not tight. Now I'm going to wipe this off. So I'll drop the glass. Okay, so we're looking good, and we are about to fill. And there's a little trick here at the end that I'm going to want my mod up and running, up and ready to go with the batteries and everything, and this in place. So I've done this a million times, so I trust that my cotton is in the proper place. So I'm just going for it and filling it damn near all the way. So now is when I'm going to put my tank on. Just up here screwing it in. Finish getting the batteries in, and I'll show you why. All right, we're popping. So let me turn this around. So what I'm going to do on here is, as I put this cap on, once it starts, this is machined very well. And I think in a way that hurts it, because this is a heavy duty tank. Everything's heavy and machined properly, so it makes a nice vacuum seal. So as I start to turn this, I'm pushing juice out the airflow channels because there's no room for it. So every time I do about a half a turn, I drink up a little bit of that juice on purpose. Half a turn. And a big hit. Half a turn. Big hit. Okay, so now we are all properly on. I'm giving it a quick wipe. And what was on it was from when I lubricated this. So let's see if I can get focus here. And I'll take it over here. Let's see if I can get this set up. I've done properly. Should be able to basically chain vape on this like it's a dripper. It's not dry hitting at all. If you didn't properly prime it, you can always loosen the top where your drip tip goes. You can relieve a little bit of pressure and you'll see air bubbles come up a little bit. That's just it's continuing to prime itself. Never a dry hit, never a leak with the way I just did that, man. So good luck to you guys.